What's up guys, Noor here and welcome to Book of Showtime Subchapter 3. As always, if you have a topic for Book of Showtime you'd like for me to cover, leave it in the comment section down below, or anywhere you can reach me on social media or the Book of Showtime Discord. Today's subchapter is going to be packed. Since I don't have a main chapter ready at the moment, I want to make sure they're not rushed so that you guys get the best video you can. I mentioned this before on Twitter and the Book of Showtime Discord, but there will be two sub-series starting in the near future. Showtime 7s, which will be debuted next Friday, and True or False. You can find out more about these in the Book of Showtime Discord, link in the description down below. Also, with Resident Evil 4 dropping soon, I'm going to be cooking up some Resident Evil themed chapters, but I would love to hear your suggestions on Resident Evil themed topics you'd like for me to cover. Now, on to today's video. Let's start by reviewing a few comments from previous chapters. Chapter 10 was the Konami triple header. My friend Vinny, who gave me the idea to talk about the Konami Big 3, left this comment. Most notably, she says, "I've spoken about it before, but personally I'd love to see Konami attempt a 3D Castlevania again. Except this time, instead of pulling inspiration from God of War, look to Dark Souls instead. The classic Castlevania games are littered with Soul staples, albeit in a 2D format, and I think the transition would be the most logical out of all the game styles that Konami could base it on." Vinny brings up an interesting point. Castlevania does have a lot of Souls games elements to it, so bringing back the series in that format would be a natural fit, both for veteran fans and newcomers alike. Souls-like games are extremely popular nowadays, so reintroducing Castlevania with a familiar game type would be a smart move should Konami choose to resurrect the iconic series. Chapter 13 was the Zelda doubleheader. My friend Zorky left this comment. "Zelda is that series where practically every single game in the series is so good that I can't even be fake angry or mad that people have such differing opinions. My favorite by far is Wind Waker, but I can totally accept almost any answer as a favorite game, especially Twilight Princess. Based opinions and ideas for characters for Smash 2. I mentioned to Zorky that Zelda has been around long enough that you're going to have generational differences in fans, because a lot of people have gotten into the game at different times in the series. Let's take Resident Evil for example. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I grew up playing the PS1 era games with the fixed angles and no UI. The original Resident Evil 2 was my first, but there's some people who got into the series at Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 7. There's massive differences between all three of these games, to the point where if I just showed a random person in the street raw gameplay, you'd never guess they were the same franchise. I honestly think that's pretty cool. It's a testament to how a series is able to adapt to modern times to sustain longevity. Obviously, I'm always going to have a love for the original Resident Evil games, but seeing the series have this many fans is always awesome. In Chapter 12, we ranked every Call of Duty Zombies installment. When I was recording and writing out the script for Chapter 12, I was going off of pure memory, and in hindsight, I want to honestly go back and tie Cold War and Black Ops 4. I'm looking at Black Ops 4 as I type this, and there was a lot of content in the game that I took for granted. The custom settings you can make to change up the experiences is cool, all the bonus modes are nice to have, and in reality, these were some really great maps as I seriously sit back and reminisce. Outbreak was cool and all the changes to zombies were great, but Cold War just had too much untapped potential and, in all honesty, no real identity. All of the traditional maps were extremely forgettable in the long run, and because of the crunching and reduced team, they aren't that unique in terms of design. If you played campaign or multiplayer, then you've seen all the zombies maps. As I look back at Black Ops 4, yes, Blood of the Dead, Classified, Alpha Omega, and Tag Their Totem at their core are fleshed out remakes, but I feel that if you haven't played zombies, this isn't a fair way to describe these maps, as they really aren't remakes but reimaginings. I'm a bit ashamed about not giving Black Ops 4 the respect it deserves, and my views on it are somewhat entitled. The Zombies team was shrunken down that year due to Blackout, and despite that, all the maps are really well designed and have great depth, minus Tag Their Totem, which I personally feel was a really flat ending to a great story. Although the weapon sandbox isn't too juicy or memorable, I do like the variety of weapons available to use, namely the Peacekeeper, the Hades, and the Zweihander, or the airplane gun as I called it. It's a tremendous time playing Black Ops 4 Zombies, I can't deny that, and I thought the enemy designs were great. I'm a little upset now as I just kind of spent a chapter not really giving this game the credit it deserves for how great it is. So, do you remember back in Chapter 11 how we discussed downgrades in sports sims? This was originally a top 7 list, and here's the original list. Number 7 was Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. We discussed in depth back in Chapter 5 how this was the worst Call of Duty of all time. For a while, number 7 was Call of Duty Ghost, but Black Ops Cold War it was really bad. Call of Duty Ghost wasn't a bad game at all. It just had the unfair task of being released right after Black Ops 2, which is considered by many to be the best Call of Duty. Number 6 was NBA Jam on Fire Edition. While NBA Jam is a sports game, it's not a sports sim, and it can exercise more creative freedom. This was originally supposed to be a bonus game included with NBA Elite 11, which was the spiritual successor to NBA Live. NBA Elite got scrapped, but EA still went ahead and released On Fire Edition as a standalone digital title. Even though the game wasn't intended to be released standalone, it was still missing the remix mode entirely, which left the game lacking in content. Number 5 was Saints Row 4, which in reality we can forgive 4 after the mess that was Saints Row 2022. Because while 4 was really goofy and not well structured, it was better than whatever this reboot wanted to accomplish. Number 4 was a tie between God of War Ascension and Gears of War Judgment. I had them tied because, well, they're both the Of War exclusives to PlayStation and Xbox respectively. They're both prequels, and they were both massively underwhelming and did nothing to the overall plot of either game. They were essentially cash grabs while the main team decided where to go next in the franchise. Number 3 was Resident Evil 6, which we can actually argue to put either 4, 5, or 6 in this spot for various reasons. Yes, I said Resident Evil 4 is a downgrade, and not because of the gameplay, but really in the tone and the trend it started for the series going forward. In due time, I will release a chapter to talk about this. Number 2 was Ghost Recon Breakpoint because it was a rushed mess that tried to be too much like The Division instead of like its predecessor Wildlands, which was still getting support as of 2019. And to this day, I don't know why you would try to make your game like another game that's under the same banner. It just made no sense. I remember playing the beta for Breakpoint. It was basically the full game, and they released the beta about a week before the game came out, and it had a lot of issues, and I was like, this is it? This is the game? This comes out next week? There's no way. And yeah, it launched and no one really liked it. Once I finally played it, it was like, yeah, this is not it. And number 1 was every sports series ever at some point, which we covered in Chapter 11 in full. In Chapter 14, we went over WWE booking decisions that I would change, and I really enjoyed making that video, and there's a lot more booking decisions that I didn't include in Chapter 14, so I will be making another chapter on this concept again. Lastly, I recently asked on Twitter for you guys to drop your picks for most overrated or underrated games, and Brian responded with a gif of Ice Spice. And while this isn't a game, I figured I'd give my 2 cents on her anyway. Off rip, I'm just gonna say I personally don't think she's good at all. She has a lot of sex appeal, yes, but her actual musical talent, it's just not it. Her target audience is very specific, and her fans love her because she makes music for them, but as I've always said about any artist, actual good music transcends genre and audience and even language. I don't know anyone who's not a girl that goes clubbing that bangs with her music. That's very telling, isn't it? Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this chapter. Make sure to leave a like and share with your friends. Inshallah, I will see you in the next chapter.